Busting myths is a serious business, and it comes with a long list of risks. From oversized explosions to literal torture, these dangerous experiments pushed the MythBusters to their limits. Being trapped in a submerging car that's quickly filling with water is the stuff of nightmares. Lots of people in movies and TV shows have made daring escapes from underwater vehicles, but is Adam Savage one of them? The MythBusters recreated such a scenario in 2 separate episodes to see if Adam could escape from a sinking car without breaking a window or breathing in extra air from a safety source.
Adam, I only have one thing to say to you.
Yeah.
Don't pee in the pool.
The first experiment involved Adam trying to escape from a vehicle while it was slowly lowered front first into a swimming pool. He could not escape in time and used his emergency air. In a later episode, they tried it again, except the conditions were much worse. This time, Adam had to exit the car as it turned turtle, flipped on its back, while sinking, which is more likely than the movies would have you believe. When Adam once again couldn't escape, he signaled his safety diver for emergency air. But the diver was upside down, so as Adam put it, an upside-down regulator will give you air, but it also gives you a lot of water. I took a deep breath and took a whole bunch of water. That is a very scary thing to happen when you're underwater and you've been holding your breath for a while. Thankfully, Adam made it out just in time. He continued, outside safety divers were about 4 seconds away from smashing the windows when I opened the door and gave them the OK sign. Unless you're Jesus Christ or Peter Sellers and being there, you probably can't walk on water. But what about riding a motorcycle on water? It just might work, but barely anyone would ever want to risk ruining their ride if they sink. Not the MythBusters, though. To test this myth, Jamie Heineman got on a motorcycle, put the pedal to the metal, and tried his best to drive across the surface of a lake. Despite flipping over the first time, he eventually made it nearly 300 feet before coming to a watery halt. In an interview with Mental Floss, Jamie described his experience by saying, "Having to push a motorcycle that's almost out of control fast to its very limits, and knowing that you're going to hit the water. Who knows what's going to happen at that speed? It's thrilling, but your life is right there in front of you. We take all the safety precautions that we possibly can, but you play with fire, you can get burned." Jamie ultimately labeled this myth confirmed, but not recommended. Imagine, one moment you're arguing over dinner. The next, you're arguing about who's going to fix the hole in your wall caused by a Civil War-era cannon. During one of their filming sessions, the MythBusters B team spent the day firing cannonballs made of different materials at a cinder block wall to see whether or not they could break it. Even though they had protective barriers set up and were at a military firing range, the worst possible scenario still happened. As Tori Belleci put it, every other cannonball went into our catcher in our hill. The fire department showed up about 20 minutes later after this last shot and they were like, "Are you guys shooting cannonballs?" As it turned out, one of the cannonballs flew over 700 yards, ending up in a nearby neighborhood where it went entirely through a house and through the window of a minivan. Although no one was hurt, they definitely would have been if the speeding ball had made contact with their body. Tori admitted that this was, quote, "one of the most terrifying days on the show." The cannonball misfire made national news and caused the MythBusters crew to postpone filming so they could reevaluate their safety procedures. A few months later, they reshot the experiment at a remote rock quarry and fired cannonballs made of sandstone, limestone, and granite. The granite cannonball caused almost as much damage as the one made of metal, and the myth was declared plausible. From postal vans to toilets, the MythBusters have blown up all kinds of everyday objects. Whether they're using gunpowder or grenades to make an explosion, things tend to get pretty bombastic, pun intended. One of the main driving points of MythBusters is the escalation of experiments to the extreme, and in Season 3 of the series, the team ended up with what would end up being the biggest boom in the show's history. Jamie reminisced, "Everybody seems to remember the cement truck as a favorite episode. We used 800 pounds of ANFO, which is a fertilizer diesel fuel mix. The cement truck was there, and then it wasn't there. It was just gone, and that was cool." Adam and Jamie wanted to see if putting the equivalent of a stick of dynamite inside a cement truck could remove a slab of concrete. That part was labeled plausible, but they took it to the extreme by loading up the truck with the explosive mix. The crew had to stand a mile away to keep themselves safe as they watched the cement truck vanish before their eyes during the explosion, which was supervised by the FBI.
Well, there's your problem.
Where'd it go? It's all gone. There's no more truck.
I left it right here.
There aren't many television personalities who would agree to be tortured, but MythBusters isn't a normal show. When the team decided to see if slowly dripping water on someone's forehead over time would really leave them in agony, Kari Byron ended up in the hot seat, or rather, wet seat. The MythBusters designed and created their very own torture chamber with a rack, a brace, and a constantly dripping tap. Before the test, Kari was asked a set of questions to establish her stress levels and had her vital signs checked. After she was strapped to the device, a drop of water hit her forehead in the same spot every 2 seconds. Things didn't go so well for Kari. As the test progressed, her answers began to reveal her mental state as it deteriorated from the torture. After an hour, with tears pouring from her eyes, Kari began to give in as she was stricken by panic. She could have stopped the test at any moment, but persevered past the point where many would have tapped out. This test wasn't physically dangerous like many of the MythBusters stunts, but torture leaves lasting negative effects on its victims, even if they did it voluntarily. After an experience like this, even the sound of a leaky faucet might cause flashbacks and recurring nightmares. Few films have been able to capture the anxiety many people suffer from when facing their fear of heights. Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo did it masterfully in 1958, and in 1993, Sylvester Stallone starred in Cliffhanger, a movie that took audiences to the dizzying heights of the Rocky Mountains. In the movie, Stallone's character runs from a bomb placed at one end of a rope bridge before leaping to the other end as it collapses. Is such a stunt possible to recreate for real? That was a question the MythBusters simply had to know the answer to. The team recreated the scene by building a full-scale pine board and steel cable bridge that was strung across a dock. Adam and Jamie took turns running across the bridge as it fell, trying to defy gravity in the same way Stallone's character did in the movie. Several attempts ended with them dangling in a safety harness high in the air, and the MythBusters soon realized that the feat would be impossible. They never had time to actually leap once it began to collapse, as the loss of tension resulted in them falling along with the bridge. Sorry, Sly. This myth is busted.
This is safety equipment, having kept me alive one more time. Hi, Mom.
The term knock your socks off has been around for ages, but if you're trying to impress someone, you're not actually expecting them to literally fly out of their footwear. That said, the MythBusters once decided to see if they could knock the socks off a mannequin by using various methods of force. One of the craziest ideas they came up with involved an explosive shockwave that did more than just remove its socks. Mannequin legs wearing socks were positioned on a circular grid at different distances from where the explosion was set to go off. The team used 500 pounds of explosives, which created a shockwave so big that it shattered windows and scared residents in a town a mile away. One resident even claimed that they fell off their couch. Some people complained, saying they should have been alerted about the dangerous MythBusters episode being filmed, while others found the blast to be just as cool as the crew. Even though the myth was busted, it was revisited in a later episode and confirmed when sock-wearing stunt dummy Buster was smacked with a metal girder mounted on a speeding truck. Some goats will supposedly faint when they're startled, but others might just kick you where it hurts the most. When a goat is frightened, its leg muscles sometimes stiffen up, causing it to fall over and making it seem as though it fainted. The MythBusters B team decided to see this phenomenon up close and personally. A little too personally. During a MythBusters episode where Tori and Kari were trying to make goats faint, Tori got more than he bargained for. As the two fed the goats treats and planned their scare tactics, one of the creatures got on its hind legs and kicked Tori right in the crotch. As he joked, "If I had a nickel for every time I got hit in the groin on this show, I could retire. I hope I could still have kids."
They're laughing at us, Kari. They mock us.
Tori did indeed go on to have a daughter years later, but knowing that doesn't make the kick look any less painful. As for the MythBusters were able to scare the goats enough to get them to fall over, confirming it decisively. During the same episode in which they tried to get goats to tip over, the MythBusters watched a viral YouTube video of an explosion and wanted to see if they could recreate the experiment themselves with non-dairy coffee creamer. Since the MythBusters are known for going big, there was no way they were just going to do a simple recreation. Instead, they built a large cannon and packed it full of 500 pounds of coffee creamer and flares. The explosion that followed was just as over-the-top as the idea itself. Kari later recalled, "It made this big cloud, and we didn't think it was going to light, but then all of a sudden, the flare lights it, and it turns into this growling monster of sugary coffee creamer on fire in the sky. It looked like Apocalypse Now. I swear it growled. And then the wind changed, and it started coming at us." The B team didn't expect the fireball to be so large, so they set up their viewing station a little too close to the action. Kari continued, "I had so much fear in my heart, I just started running. It was like napalm of sugar balls falling from the sky. The cleanup was disgusting. It's a good thing everyone was all right, because a coffee creamer explosion would be a pretty embarrassing thing to be sent to the hospital for." If you see a steep cliff or a massive skyscraper show up in a movie, there's a good chance that someone's going to be hanging onto it for dear life by the time the credits roll. That's why they call it a cliffhanger after all. In his efforts to learn whether or not such suspenseful events could actually take place in real life, Tori decided to give it a try by holding onto the ledge of a 4-story building for as long as he could. After around 30 seconds, the strain began to set in. Tori held onto the ledge for almost 30 seconds more before falling. Of course, he was wearing a harness that kept him from dropping the full height of the building, but it wasn't the ground that hurt him. After falling 1 story, he smacked his shin on an unfinished window ledge, causing a horrible gash and lots of bleeding. He was lowered to the ground and quickly tended to by the emergency team on standby. You don't run a show like MythBusters and not have medical professionals available at a moment's notice after all.
All in the name of science.
The other members of the B team continued on with their trials, and they concluded that the only thing you can do in such a precarious situation is hope that help arrives as soon as possible, or pray that you survive the fall.